Sup guys, it's Tealus here. Welcome back to Netherlight Temple for the final time. In this video I will be looking at the final specialization for a priest in World of Warcraft Legion, the Shadow Priest. Now I've already gone through Holy and Discipline Priest. If you would like to look back through my videos, you'll be able to see the 4 videos containing basically their changes. In this video, in the next video, I'll be looking at what is coming to Shadow Priest specifically in World of Warcraft Legion. Now, Shadow Priest is probably tied with Discipline for the most changed priest spec, so there's a lot to go over here. In this first video, we're going to look at the priest's removed, changed, and new abilities, and there's a lot to go through there. And then in the second video, we will look at the priest's actual PvE talents and PvP talents that are coming to a priest in World of Warcraft Legion. So, in addition, at the end of this video, we will also be looking at the artifact weapon for a Shadow Priest. If you can see it right here, it's this, I believe it's a dagger that the priest has here. It is, yes, it's a dagger, and it's got a tomb, however you pronounce it. I believe it's tome. On the in the left hand there. So that is the artifact weapon for a Shadow Priest, and as you can see, I kind of am in this shadowy form permanently. It's not quite shadow form, but you do kind of have this shadow aura. So in this video, I will be going through the removed, changed, new abilities, and then we will look at the artifact weapon at the end. That will be the basis of this video, and in the next video we'll look at PvE and PvP talents. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. The biggest major change for Shadow Priests is that they are no longer operating with orbs, shadow orbs. So basically, I'm not quite sure of Blizzard's reasoning behind this, but this is my best guess as to why this has been changed. Warlocks, well, so it starts with Demon Hunters. Because Demon Hunters were added to the game, it took away Demonology Warlocks kind of, you know, like their niche, okay, their niche, however you would like to pronounce it, and so, you know, turning into a demon, that was kind of their thing, and they took it away from them because it made more sense on a demon hunter, and so as such they had to convert basically all warlocks to soul shards. They didn't think the burning embers were cutting it, so they just put everyone on soul shards. Shadow orbs kind of function like soul shards, so you had two basically resources that function the same on 2 different classes. So they decided to go ahead and revamp the whole Shadow Orb idea, which was also very much like a it kind of is like almost combo points for range, I guess you could also say as well. And instead they replaced it with something called Insanity. I'm not sure I like the name of this, because you like it kind of is awkward to say this ability generates insanity. It's just a weird word to say. The wording for the tooltip I would say is like, this ability drives you more insane, or something like that. And then, you know, when your bar is maxed out, that's when you kind of freak out as a Shadow Priest, and that's the whole point behind Insanity. I wish they'd have another word for it, but I guess Insanity does kind of work well. It kind of works, it's just not exactly the word I would choose for it. It's kind of just awkward, just because on the tooltip saying generate insanity, it sounds weird. It should be like, drives you more insane. Anyways, Insanity is basically going to be, as we go through the new abilities when we get to them, something that you generate through your abilities, and then at the end, when you reach 100, you can use an ability to just go completely insane. And the whole point of a Shadow Priest is to try and stay in that insane phase as long as possible. If you want to know what this sounds like a lot like what where I started with this whole change in the Shadow Orbs being removed, and that is that it kind of like the old Demonology Warlocks and what they had to use to become metamorphosis for the metamorphosis form. Basically, they had to build up, I think it was demonic power, and then they eventually would be able to get into the demon form, and they'd have specialized abilities, and they tried to hold on to it as long as possible. So you could say that basically Shadow Priests and Demonology Warlocks swapped their resources, and they both have something completely different now. So that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. But that's basically what is the major change for Shadow Priest. So, with that being said, let's look at the removed abilities for Shadow Priest. First, Devouring Plague is gone. That was the one that basically used your Shadow Orbs, and it was a dot. For the most part, the playstyle of a Shadow Priest is still staying the same. So, whereas you'll be seeing a lot of new abilities and changed abilities with the Shadow Priest, your playstyle is staying close to the same. Conversely, a Discipline Priest, they kept most of their abilities, but their playstyle changed pretty significantly. So, a little bit of a difference there. But Devouring Plague is gone, no longer a part of the rotation, so that has been removed. Fear Ward has been removed. That's been removed across priests across the board. Flash Heal has been removed. I believe that is only available to Holy Priests now. Not even Disc Priests have that available to them anymore. That is a Holy Priest only ability. Leap of Faith has been removed. That is Holy as well, possibly Disc. By the looks of it, yes, Disc and Holy both have that. They decided to get that away from Shadow. I mean, Shadow really shouldn't have access to, I guess, abilities that are more healing oriented. I know it's great utility, like in a rated battleground for you to have, but Blizzard, I guess, felt there was no reason for Shadow to have it. Mind Spike is now a talent, so you can actually talent back into Mind Spike, and I think it actually does take the place of something. So if you choose Mind Spike, you basically are forfeiting whatever you had before. Yes, you are forfeiting Mind Flay if you choose Mind Spike, which I think ended up being the case anyways. You know, when you decide to use Mind Spike or not use Mind Spike. So it's a talent now, so you have to talent into it. So it's basically talenting into a playstyle. There's Power Word Fortitude that has been removed. All raid-wide buffs have been removed from the game. Basically, everyone had raid-wide buffs everywhere. There was so much overlapping. There really was no reason to have that anymore. And so that is why it has been removed from the game. There's no reason for there to be that many different crisscrossing raid buffs anymore. That was originally done so that no spec was left behind for a raid, and now it's just there's no reason for it because everyone has everything. So get rid of them all. I think that's a great idea. Prayer of Mending has been removed. Once again, it's an ability that is now Holy only. Psychic Horror has been removed. I know this will hit PvP kind of hard. It really stinks. To my knowledge, it does not even return even inside your PvP talent tree, so it is gone for good. Shadow Form has been removed. Even though it looks like I'm in Shadow Form here, my body doesn't change at all, but the aura is still there when I'm just in base form. So Shadow Form has been removed. There's something taking its place. It looks way cooler, trust me. You don't get to stay in it as long. It's kind of a, it's like a metamorphosis. You only get it for a certain amount of time, and as long as you can withstand it. But the old Shadow Form is gone. And then Mastermind and Mind Quickening are gone. Both of those were straight stat buffs, either to secondary stats or to main stats, raid-wide buffs, etc. Those have all been removed from the game. Thankfully, I just did not like the fact that basically they had buffs in the game that were like, hey, nudge, nudge, this is what your main secondary stat is. Let the player figure it out for themselves. Let's not do too much hand-holding here. So that has been removed from the game as well. With that, let's take a look at the changed abilities. Dispersion, good old Dispersion, functions the same. It now reduces damage by 60% instead of 90%, so there is a lot of reduction there in what Dispersion can do for you. Also, you should know, and we'll touch back on this when we actually get to it when we actually get to the new abilities, it stops insanity consumption. So there's only one way for you to actually consume insanity, and we will discuss that, and we'll go back to Dispersion when we actually get to that. Mass Dispel, its target threshold has been reduced to 5 from 10. So originally it had a 10 target threshold in which you could, 10 targets that could actually use. Now it only has a 5 target threshold, so that's something that you should take note of. Mind Blast, it now generates 12 insanity instead of Shadow Orbs. So Mind Blast is a source for you to actually generate insanity, and Mind Blast still works just as it always has. Mind Flay will now generate 8 insanity over the duration. mind mind play still functions exactly the way it is. I do believe this void tendril is something from your artifact weapon, so don't get too excited that that's a baseline ability, but if you build up your artifact weapon, you should have access to that soon enough. We'll get to that later when we get to the artifact weapon. Mind Seer generates 6 insanity per target over the duration. So Mind Flay is 8 over the duration, Mind Seer is 6 over the duration per target. So with these 3 targets here, it's better for me to use Mind Seer. However, I'm not quite sure how they do this, because basically the way Mind Flay works is you generate 2 about every few seconds. It's a 2.8 seconds, so it looks like every 0.7 seconds you're going to generate 2 insanity. So my guess is with Mind Seer, it will every 2 seconds, every point, whatever it is, it's 4.6, so it's going to be like every 1.15 seconds, it's going to reassess where how many targets are in the area, and then give you as much insanity based on how many targets are in the area. But if you have a lot of targets like this is one of the best ways to build up your insanity through that. So just take note of that. Power Word Shield. The cooldown is increased from 6 to 7 seconds, so a small nerf there. But this is much better. It's no longer limited to being shielded once every 15 seconds. I can use Power Word Shield, and there used to be that debuff there that said you cannot be shielded again for another 15 seconds. Well, I say forget that. I can use it again. So if your damage burns out through that 17 seconds, you can put up another shield and get some more damage absorption, which is really nice for Power Word Shield. Resurrection has had its cast time increased by 0.5 seconds. This is something that has happened for everybody that has Resurrection. Basically, this has been baseline. So all Resurrection cast times have been increased by 0.5 seconds. There's Shadow Word Death. It now generates 10 insanity, but it generates 30 insanity if the target dies. So it can still only be used, underneath 20%. It gives you that nice boost if you actually murder the target with Shadow Word Death. And the cooldown has been increased from 8 seconds to 9 seconds, so a small nerf in the cooldown there, but a nice, well, you really can't call it a buff because it's brand new, but a nice little way of generating extra insanity if you're actually able to kill the target with a Shadow Word Death. Shadow Word Pain will now generate 3 insanity. This is very little, so if you're looking for Shadow Word Pain to be a good generator of insanity, don't expect it to be. It's just 3 per target you hit, so it's not the best. It now lasts 14 seconds, down from 18 seconds, so there's a nerf there in its duration. So you're going to have to kind of pay attention to the upkeep. And I will say that's like a recurring theme against all dot classes, is they've reduced the time on these dots, so that you are more engaged with the rotation and paying attention to the rotation, and it could make life easier for the rotation. I'm not quite sure, because I've never actually played in an actual raid as a dot spec, such as Affliction or this. I guess the only one you could count as a dot spec, and people really never realized this was a dot spec, was Survival Hunters. At the height of Survival Hunters, basically, I mean, you were running with Black Arrow, Serpent Sting, and Explosion Shot, which were technically all dots. Most people didn't realize that, but that was the case. But that was still very different from how Shadow and Affliction were playing. So, it may be just to make the rotation easier. I'm not quite sure. I honestly don't, I'm not sure about that, about why they've made the small change from 18 to 14 seconds. Do you know that damage numbers change all the time? So, depending on how damage numbers play out, that 14 seconds of damage could be way more than the 18 seconds before. We won't know damage numbers until really everything goes live. So that is why I do not report on damage numbers unless I see something significant. Vampiric Embrace now heals for 40% of the damage dealt, up from 10%. And this may be a tooltip change. I'm not quite sure. I'm a little confused on this one. But it now, I believe, focuses on one target ally instead of multiple allies. From what I could gather from comparing the live client versus this client, is that it would heal nearby. It said in the tooltip, you will heal nearby allies for 10% of any single target shadow damage you deal. However, in this tooltip, it says you will heal a nearby ally for 40% of the single target shadow damage you deal. So, basically, I'm gonna guess that healing out of this will still be pretty consistent in a raid. However, it's going to be only one ally as opposed to multiple, and this benefits something like 2s and 3s in arena, in which someone near you may need some serious healing, and they can actually get it as opposed to just a measly old 10%. So I think overall this change will end up being better overall. Vampiric Touch will now last 18 seconds up from 15 seconds. So this is one of the ones in which it actually has an increase in its duration. It heals the priest for 50% of the damage dealt by Vampiric Touch. So you're going to get healed for that. And then it also generates 4 insanity. This is not a great way to generate insanity once again because, I mean, it's a cast time and you only get 4 out of it. Once again, I think the best way of generating is probably going to be this Mind Seer. I mean, that's going to be 18. This right here with this, if I'm hitting all targets every single time, I'm getting 18 insanity every single time I cast it. I think that's probably the best way to generate insanity at the moment. With that being said, the last changed ability is going to be Mastery Mental Anguish. So first off, they basically renamed it Mastery Madness, and they've completely changed what abilities it affects. So let me just pull up the ability, the mastery here, so you understand what is actually the mastery is. If you have forgotten, it increases damage. This is basic increased damage. However, it now affects Shadow Word Pain, Void Bolt, which we'll get to in a little bit, and by Vampiric Touch, so your dots, as opposed to what it used to be, which was your Mind Blast, your Mind Spike, and your Mind Flay. Technically, if I remember correctly, you were either choosing Mind Spike or Mind Flay, so you were basically only getting the benefit of the doubt on 2 abilities there. So I like the change that they've done a little bit here, but I kind of wish they had gone with something more creative. Because as we get into these new abilities, I kind of feel like they should have done the mastery built around the new resource mechanic Insanity, because it works really well with that. However, for some reason they decided to just go with base damage buffs. Who knows? Maybe in a future expansion they will change it into this. And it will be Mastery Void Form, which is kind of what this is built all around. So, before we get into all the other new abilities, I want to go straight into Void Form, speaking of that, because this is the big ability that, changes everything and explains how things will operate. Void Form. It is a passive. Activated by casting Void Eruption, which we will get to after this. Increasing all damage you deal by 20%, which is kind of like Shadow Form. And reduces the cooldown of Mind Blast by 3 seconds, and grants an additional 1% haste every 1 second. Your insanity will drain increasingly fast until it reaches 0 and Void Form ends. When Void Form ends, you gain Lingering Insanity, allowing for the haste bonus to persist for 1 minute or until you enter the next Void Form. So, what does this basically mean? Basically, the whole playstyle of a Shadow Priest is trying your best to stay in your your Void Form as much as possible. To be honest, this is somewhat like, it really does have a lot of similarities to how Demonology Warlock was operating. So, basically, you're going to be trying to stay in this form as much as possible. That is everything you are trying to accomplish with this. And stay in this as long as possible, because every second that you stay in this, the longer your haste buff goes up. And then that haste buff lasts for a minute. And you're going to have Void Form up within a minute. So it could be, you could be at a juncture in like a PvE raid boss, and you're going to have interesting decisions where you're going to be like, okay, he's about to go into phase mode where I can't actually attack him. I'm going to hold off on my Void Form for now and wait to, and just let my haste buff, run its course. I still have 30 seconds left on my haste buff, even though I've reached max insanity. I'll just let my haste buff continue to go through, and then when he pops back down and the PvE boss is ready to be, for us to DPS him again, I can pop Insanity and try and get massive damage off on him again. So it's going to kind of give you some interesting choices in PvE. PvP, I think, will also have some interesting choices, but I mean, PvP is really going to be about the void form and the extra damage, whereas PvE is going to be about, you know, choosing when to use that void form, when you want to keep that extra haste and so forth. So interesting options here, and I really do like this. So with void form comes this ability, Void Bolt. For the duration of void form, your Void Eruption ability is replaced by Void Bolt. Void Bolt is a 4.18 second cooldown, sends a bolt of pure void energy at the enemy, causing 75,000 shadow damage and refreshing your Shadow Word Pain Vampiric Touch to their original duration. Requires void form. Generates 16 insanity, so it's a lot of insanity that this is able to create. I mean, Mind Blast only does 12. This does 16, and it's on a 4.18 second cooldown, which is pretty cool. With that, let's go to the third ability that rounds out this whole new, you know, how void form is operating, and that's Void Eruption. Releases an explosive blast of pure void energy, activating void form, causing 32,000 shadow damage to all enemies afflicted by your Shadow Word Pain or Vampiric Touch. During void form, this ability is replaced by Void Bolt, and it requires 100 insanity to activate. So, with that being said, let's kind of take a look at how this is going to work. Once again, I said Mind Seer is probably the best way for you to build up really quickly your actual your your insanity. I can't even get through that. I'm not used to it as well. I mean, I could do Shadow Word Pain, but as I said before, Shadow Word Pain, it just, I mean, it only gives 3 per hit, so that's how it is. So the first ability I'm going to use here is going to be Void Eruption. That's what's going to give me my void form. So before this begins, though, I'm actually going to put Vampiric Touch on all these characters, as well as Shadow Word Pain. Get it on all the 2 characters. And then with that, we're going to actually go into Void Eruption. And then from there, it's all about using these abilities. I'll use a Void Bolt here. And as you can see, with instant cast, pretty easy to use. And it's all about staying in this form as long as possible. You want to stay in this form as long as possible. And then finally, you will exit out. And I was in that form for 17 seconds. So I got 17% off on that, which is pretty awesome. And so I can build it up again and try and, you know, get myself in a position to have another void form up. And then through that, remember, this haste buff will be consumed when I actually use it, when I actually get into the void form. So you won't have that haste buff anymore once we reach it, because we're about to reach it right here again. So I'm going to show you once again how this operates. We're going to get dots up on targets again. All of them. And then finally we will go ahead and use void form and try and keep it up as much as possible. And this is basically how everything will be functioning for a void, I wanted to call it a void warlock for some reason. This is how things are going to be working for a Shadow Priest in World of Warcraft Legion. Basically, you just build up that haste buff. Right now, I'm getting it about 16, 17 stacks. That's how much I'm able to burst it up. There are some different abilities that will allow you to keep it up even longer. But it is a really cool ability. I mean, just look at this this spell visual that they have for it. It's really cool. So I'm really impressed with what they did in terms of the form. It looks way better than Shadow Form ever did. They kept the aura for Shadow Form, but then they give you that awesome Void Form, which looks way better. But that is everything in how you are going to operate as a Shadow Priest. It's everything involving your Void Form, trying to build it up, trying to make it last as long as possible before being forced to kind of downgrade into your other form. That's pretty cool. Spreading your dots out, etc., dealing lots of damage. Through spreading your dots out, you're able to proc your old passives, if I remember correctly, which allow you to get the instant cast Mind Blasts and so forth. So that's really kind of what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get as much as possible to generate, stay in void form as much as possible, which is pretty cool. So with that, there are still 3 abilities that I need to go over. These are impact much less significant. Their impact is much less significant than those 3 void abilities. And so the first one of these is going to be Psychic Scream is now baseline for Shadow Priest. So expect that to be baseline. I believe it has a 1-minute cooldown. I gotta make sure I don't have a talent. Yes, it has a 1-minute cooldown. You can talent it down to 30 seconds, but it is baseline with a 1-minute cooldown. The next new ability is going to be Purify Disease. I looked for this in my spellbook. I might have just missed this. I believe the priest that I was using to compare was at level 90, so I was only missing out on Draenor enhancements. But it's possible that Shadow did not have Purify Disease, and basically they want to keep it consistent across the board, that any spec with a healing class still has the downgraded version of that Purify that does not allow you to purify magic effects. So the normal Purify, whatever it may be called in the other forms, I can't even remember what it's called in the other form, it's just called straight Purify, will remove magic and disease, and then you have Purify Disease just for your Shadow Priest. And then the third new ability is called Shadow Mend. Wraps an ally. This is available, I believe, to everybody. Even Holy Priests, I think, have Shadow Mend, which I find a little awkward for them to have it. Possibly they don't. Okay, they don't, but I know Discipline Priest does have access to Shadow Mend. So Shadow Mend is a new ability, wraps the ally in shadows, which heals for 164,000, but at a price. The ally will take 8,000 damage every 1 second until they have taken 82,000 total damage from all sources or leave combat. So it's a nice heal there, but it's a really strong heal, but it will kind of cut down over time. It puts a self dot on yourself. So if you're able to eliminate the self dot somehow, it ends up being pretty powerful as a heal, especially for a quick heal for a Shadow Priest. So you lost something like Flash Heal to keep your health up, but Shadow Mend is your replacement. There's no cooldown on it, so you can use it as much as you want, get those heals off, etc. So, do be careful. It actually does cost mana. Very few abilities as a Shadow Priest cost mana, because everything is all about your insanity. But they do want to make sure that when you're using something like this, it costs a lot of mana. And by the looks of it, it looks about almost 1/5 your bar. So almost 20% of your mana bar is being chunked down with Shadow Mend. So just be careful and conscious of your mana bar, which you generally are not going to have to pay attention to, but you will if you start using something like Shadow Mend. Even Purify Disease is in that category. So abilities that you don't use very often, they are put on a mana bar, and that's so that Blizzard can kind of mitigate how much you're able to use these abilities. They don't want you to be able to just sit there and spam Shadow Mend forever, or whatever it may be. So, with that, oh, by the way, Power Word Shield also costs mana, so be careful on that, but it's on a cooldown, so you shouldn't have a problem. So, with that, I think we can go ahead and take a look at the artifact weapon for a Shadow Priest. This is really cool. I even like the name. This name is sick. It's called Zal-Atoth. I believe that's pronounced correctly. Zal-Atoth, Blade of the Black Empire. That is awesome sounding for a weapon. So, the first ability you have here is called Void Torrent. Raise your dagger to the sky, channeling a torrent of void energy into the target for 403,000 shadow damage over 4 seconds. Insanity does not drain during this channel. Requires Void Form. So, to actually show this, I'm going to have to actually build up Void Form again. So, we'll go ahead and do that. While we build this up, let's revisit one thing that I did mention, I said I would revisit, and that is Dispersion. So, if I'm in Void Form, very similar to how this ability is going to operate, my insanity in consumption will stop. If you have not noticed, when you look in the top left-hand corner, the insanity just starts to drop, and I'm constantly using abilities to keep it back up, but it does drain. So it's something that you're going to have to pay attention to. I will first display Dispersion, and then we will display Void Torrent afterwards. So we use Void Eruption, and then I'm going to use Dispersion. You can see the meter stops up in the top left-hand corner. And now we're going to use Void Torrent. When I come out of it, you can see it dragging down right now, and it gets faster and faster. And then I use Void Torrent now. There you go, right there. That is Void Torrent. And then when it ends, it goes back to actually requiring me to cast abilities and get my insanity back up again. I have to become more insane again before I can go back into that void form. So that is the new ability the artifact weapon brings. It's really powerful. 547,000 shadow damage is no joke. So basically, every time you get into void form, you're probably going to want to make sure that you're able to use this. So most likely, people will probably time it so that they use void torrent right away, and then when they're able to build it back up to the next level, they're able to do something else. Now, notice that I hit 20 stacks this time, but I didn't even try very long. That's because using dispersion gave me 6 seconds of haste, and then using this gave me another 10 seconds of haste. So it would not surprise me for dispersion to actually maybe possibly be in the rotation of a shadow priest in raids. I don't know. The theory crafters are going to have to figure that out. But an extra, delaying your shadow form for that long is actually pretty potent. And, we'll try it right here one more time just so we can go ahead and see what it does. I will actually do my absolute best to try and make this drag out as long as possible so we can see just how much I can create here. And we will build it all the way up. And then I will try my best using both the new ability from Void Torrent and using the using dispersion to try and see how big of a haste buff I can actually get out of void form. So it should be complete right here. So let's go ahead and put my dots up like I did last time, and quickly put them up, all of them across the board. And then we need to put Shadow Word Paint up, all of them up. Alright, good, we're good to go. And there it is right there. I can use that and use that. Now I'll use my channel with Void Torrent right there. It pauses everything. On top of that, I'll use Dispersion to make it go even longer. And then I will use Void Bolt immediately with Mind Blast again, and just try and bring it out as long as possible. As long as I can possibly imagine to make this last out and see how high I can get it. I got it up to 27 stacks that time, so 27% haste now on all of my abilities. I'm able to cast very quickly, and it makes this class very fun because you're able to deal a lot of damage really quickly and a lot of burst damage coming out of Void Form with that entire minute of having a large haste buff. So that's pretty cool. So we've spent a long time trying to show how Shadow is going to operate in the new expansion. With that, let's go ahead and go with, let's look at the rest of this talent tree now. So we know what Void Torrent does. Let's go ahead and loop around the bottom of this dagger here, or the handle of this dagger here, and then we will go up to the top. So we have Void Siphon, Mind Siphon, increases the damage dealt by Mind Flay by 20%, so that's straight buff there. We have Void Corruption, increases the damage done by Mind Seer by 15%, that's 3 ranks, so 5% per rank. We have Thoughts of Insanity, increases the healing done by Shadow Mend by 30%, 10% per rank, 3 ranks. We have Sinister Thoughts, increases the damage done by Void Bolt by 15%. Void Bolt member is only usable in Void form. We have Touch of Darkness, increases the damage done by Vampiric Touch by 15%, 5% per rank there. And then here we have Call to the Void. Mind Flay has a chance to spawn a Void Tentacle that channels Mind Flay at your target for 10 seconds. So, as I mentioned, that would be in the talent tree, having the little tentacle come up. And it's basically, I believe, a 10% chance per tick. Let's see if it actually activates sometime not in the... Yeah, there we go. It activated in the middle of it. Now, this is kind of like a cool spell visual effect for a PvEer, but this is insanely popular for a PvPer because that means that you now have something casting Mind Flay and snaring them while you're able to do other more important stuff. Just think of that, because there have been many times in which I've tried to get away from someone and they've had to, or I've interrupted their Mind Flay, and then their stupid little tentacle is still snaring me across the battlefield, which was really annoying. But that is something that's really nice for Shadow Priests to have. So with that, let's go up into the dagger portion of this talent tree. We have Unleash... Oh, sorry, I missed this one down here. We have Mental Fortitude. Healing from Vampiric Touch when you are at maximum health will shield you for the same amount. Shield cannot exceed 117,000 damage absorbed. So Vampiric Touch... remember, it heals the priest for all damage done. So as it deals damage, you can see Mental Fortitude right here building up stacks of shields. So I guess you could say almost the defensive theme for a Shadow Priest is the absorption. You have your shields, which you can cast on cooldown, and then you have something like Mental Fortitude running as well. If I'm able to put Vampiric Touch on multiple targets, let's see just how much I can actually gain in terms of a shield. Looks like 139,000. As it said, it cannot exceed a certain amount. For this, it's going to be 139,000, but with 3 targets, it's going to build up twice as fast. So just know that. And heal much quicker if you actually have damage dealt to you. So, with that, Death's Embrace increases the damage of Shadow Word Death by 10%. 3 ranks, so that'll be 3, 7, and 10, or 3, 6, and 10. We have Unleash the Shadows. Vampiric Touch critical strikes have a 45% to create a shadowy apparition. So you know that those shadowy apparitions are done from critical strikes of your Shadow Word Pain. However, if you are able, you have a 45% chance per Vampiric Touch to make that happen as well. So you can have shadows flying all over the place if you're able to get the actual crits off and the RNG for the 45%. So that's pretty cool. That's going to be 3 ranks, so that's 15% per rank. To the Pain increases the damage dealt by Shadow Word Pain by 18%. That'll be 6% per rank for 3 ranks. Creeping Shadows increases the damage dealt, increases shadow damage dealt by 3%. 3 ranks, 1% per rank. That's really a lame talent. We have Thrive in the Shadows. Dispersion heals you for 50% of your maximum health over its duration. That's just 1 rank. That's an awesome ability to have, and most likely, I mean, PvPers are basically going to have to be like, okay, do I want to have Dispersion, or do I want the Tentacle? You're going to have to decide in the beginning which one you want really quickly. And then, I mean, Mental Fortitude's a really good option too. Probably PvPers will go down first before going up, but this is an option that's pretty awesome, and you're going to want to build it really quickly. We have From the Shadows, reduces the cooldown of Dispersion by 30 seconds, so 2-minute cooldown regularly. That's the way it is on live, and this brings it down to a 1.5-minute cooldown, so it's a great change there, great buff. We have Sphere of Insanity. The Sphere of Insanity manifests for the duration of Void form. Your Void Bolts, Mind Blasts, and Mind Flays cause the sphere to duplicate 5% of their damage to all enemies affected by your Shadow Word Pain. I don't know if you guys noticed this. I will show it off to you, and I will build up as we go through the rest of this. But that's an interesting thing. The sphere was active the entire time I was doing this. It was just down there at the bottom, so that's pretty cool. There's Mind Shattering, 3 ranks, increases the damage dealt by Mind Blast by 15%. And then last is Mass Hysteria. Every 1 second, Void Form increases damage dealt by Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch by 2%, stacking until Void Form ends. So this is another incentive for you to build this up as quickly as possible. And really, the PvEers will be jumping up to the top end of this tree first before going to the bottom, whereas the PvPers will likely be going to the bottom first. So, with that being said, let me go ahead and switch into Void. Let me go ahead and put all the buffs on the targets, or the debuffs on the targets. And then we will go ahead and pop Shadow Form. And you will see the little orb right here. And it just shot out damage to all of them. That's from the orb. Okay, you can see the orb there to my right. That is the orb that they are discussing with Sphere of Insanity. So that's pretty cool. It is a 5% chance each tick to duplicate. Your Void Bolts, Mind Blast, and Mind Flays cause the sphere to duplicate 5% of their damage to all affected enemies by your Shadow Word Pain. So as I use Mind Blast there at the beginning, that's what caused all of those targets to take all that damage, was specifically from that Sphere of Insanity. So that's a really cool option for you to have there, and it's kind of it's going to give you a different option of what to do depending on the fight. Maybe in the fight you need to just stack up, Shadow Word Pains all over the place, so that when your Void Form is up and your Sphere of Insanity comes out, you're able to just pop it and deal lots of damage. So, instead of popping, I'm just going to put Shadow Word Pain on everyone, so we can have it on everyone, and then I will go ahead and pop Void Form, and then I will use Mind Blast so we can see the shot. Damn it, right there you can see the bolt that was shot out. There it is again. There's the bolt out again. Here's another Mind Blast. Gonna shoot it out again. Oh, my Shadow Word Pain's in. But as you can see, the Void Sphere does shoot out. It looks like little shadow bolts from Warlocks. That's basically what it looks like. So, really cool changes to Shadow Priest here. Some really interesting changes. The talent tree will continue to add to these changes, both the PvE and the PvP talent tree. We will get to them in the next video, but that is it for this video, looking at the abilities and the sorry, not the talents, the abilities, changed, removed, and new for Shadow Priest, as well as looking at the artifact weapon, just because it has such an awesome name. I will say it off again if I can even remember what it's called. It's called a Zalatoth Blade of the Black Empire. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one, in which we will be looking at the PvE and PvP talents. Otherwise, I will see you guys later. Tearless out.